Hello, welcome to Hayward 18, episode 3. Today we have Marvin Peixoto. Hayward 18 is a television show. It's a program that is aimed to young people, voters in the city of Hayward. We're trying to bring you, the candidates, we try to bring you, the politicians, so that you can be aware of the political climate in your city. You can get excited and involved in this election. Remember that 2018 is a year of election in our city. And here with us, Marvin, council member and candidate for re-election 2018, again as a council member. So Marvin, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Great. Let's start with your long career of public service. I know that you were born in Hayward.
Yes, I was.
Some years ago. You probably grew up somewhere else. And
That's correct.
And then you came back to Hayward, and that was almost 40 years ago.
Yes.
You're a product of Cal State.
Cal State Hayward.
For both your bachelor's degree and your master's in public administration.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, also, people need to know that, well, you're a war veteran. You're a Vietnam War veteran.
Yes, I am.
Thank you for your
I'm
service.
very proud of it.
Absolutely. And this is something that you did for 6 years.
Yes.
I know that your career is long, so we're just going to brush through it because there's a lot of years of service and leadership. You've been very involved with unions. You've been in position of service for many, many years, and also positions of leadership. You're director, president of different civic associations.
Mm-hmm.
I know that one of the things that you're most proud of is the one-stop employment system that benefits our city and the cities around us.
Yes.
One of your emphasis has been providing opportunities of employment for people who have been displaced or otherwise. I think that was a problem back when you first became interested in serving the city, and it is still a problem. There's a lot of people underemployed and employed.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, that's a problem that continues even today. What are the solutions? What do you have in mind?
Well, you know, when I first started in the employment service, it was back in the days when they had the CETA program.
Right.
Called the Comprehensive Employment Training Act of 1973. And I first started out in that business working for a community-based organization known as the American GI Forum, which was a Latino-based, community-based organization that had the responsibility of placing veterans in jobs as they came out of the service. And one of the things that I did was place Vietnam-era veterans in jobs. And so we placed a lot of them at the Naval Air Station in Alameda. We had a pharmaceutical program where we placed people at the San Francisco VA. So I have a long past in employment and training programs. After I worked at the community-based organization, I went on and I decided to become an administrator in those very programs that I used to work for. So now I moved from direct services, where I was a job developer, counselor, and manager of a program, to monitoring those programs. And I worked for the Alameda County Training and Employment Board. And that agency had administrative oversight of all the programs, not just the American GI Forum, but all the programs in Alameda County. And so we had many community-based organizations that specialized in what we called at that time target populations, serving the employment and training needs of different groups. Advocates for Women was one of the programs. There was even, believe it or not, a Portuguese organization called Community Organization for Portuguese Americans, where we focused on that. There was one targeted at ex-offenders Project Intercept. Arturo Hernandez was the project director. And so my job as an administrator was to go out and monitor those programs for compliance, both on a programmatic end and on a fiscal compliance level. And I enjoyed that job so much. That's where I got my taste of public service, and I think that's one of the catalysts that moved me and sparked my desire to move on into becoming an elected official.
No doubt. I think that we can really use your skills and your experience acquiring this long career. As we know, Hayward it's a city with huge potential, huge growth, but we need somebody that has the kind of experience that you have to create opportunities for residents of Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as serving your city in the council, your career could have started in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
It had to wait until 2010
Mm-hmm.
when you were elected.
Yes.
And then 4 years later, you got reelected.
Yes.
So you've been in the council member for
it'll be
10 years.
8 years, yeah.
And
We got a little extra time this year because remember, moved the elections from June to November. So I would have been 8 years as of June 30th, but it'll be 8 years in a few months.
Well, now, so your position is going to be open. You're going to be running for re-election. You have a track record that people can learn about. People
Mm-hmm.
can look at what you've been doing personally and what positions you've been taking for the last 8 years and make up their minds.
Correct. And I hope they make up their mind and choose me.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the date to do that. But so right now I'm interested in your record. How would you describe your positions? How would you describe the synergy that you have with the rest of your workmates, colleagues, with the rest of the members of the council, the mayor? After 8 years in this position, where do you think is your position stronger? Is your position something that can help the problems, solve the problems that the city of Hayward has?
I think so, because I've learned a lot over the last 8 years. One of the most important issues that we've had to deal with over my tenure, and we will have it going forward into the new election, is fiscal sustainability.
Okay.
So lots of cities and public jurisdictions are going through some tough times when it comes to making certain budget decisions. And the reason for that is that many organizations, and not just the city of Hayward, have what we call structural budget deficits. And a structural budget deficit is different from a fiscal year budget deficit. In a fiscal year, you may have a little bit of a loss of revenue, but you can plug that hole, so to speak, with reserve money. And this fiscal year budget deficit is handled. A structural budget deficit is much more complex because that essentially means that year after year, you are increasingly spending more money than you have coming in. And it is disproportionate to any reasonable expectation of new revenue coming in.
It has become a chronic problem.
Exactly. And again, not just in the city of Hayward. So what are the two prime drivers of the structural budget deficit that we see, that BART sees, the city of Oakland sees? And that is pensions and retiree medical coverage, what some people call OPEB, other post-employee benefits. And those costs keep rising.
Is that a cost associated with the city of Hayward, or it's a state liability?
It is a state issue in that for many of us, our pension systems go through the CalPERS systems.
Right.
So CalPERS sets what they call an expected return. They call it the coupon rate. So for so many years, they set that rate at 7.5%, which was pretty unrealistic in most people's views. And so if they didn't get that 7.5% return on their investments, guess who gets to pay the difference? Well,
Citizens.
the cities and the public agencies. And so that has been a part of the problem.
Okay. I forgot to say, for many years, you're now retired, but for many years you were a budget analyst. So I think that we are lucky to have somebody who understands all of these things, you know, up in the government. We have you in leadership roles in 3 very important committees, I believe. One is the council appointed officers. That means that you're in charge of recruiting and I guess approving some key positions in the city
Right.
of
Right.
Hayward. So we need somebody with a proven track record of good decision making.
And remember, the city council really only hires 3 people. It's the city manager that hires the fire chief, police chief, and everybody else. Council hires the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk.
Correct.
And we are responsible for monitoring their performance and evaluating them. And of course, we're going through those evaluations right now as we speak.
So you're in charge not only of providing leadership to the city, but also in hiring the people that are going to be providing or extending that leadership.
Exactly.
That's a lot of
Exactly.
responsibility. And you're also in the infrastructure committee.
Yes.
Now, infrastructure committee provides some in-depth review of the capital improvement projects.
Yes.
Can you explain to me what that is, please?
Most of those capital improvement projects that we've dealt with have been street improvement projects. Now, you know, I also serve on the Alameda County Transportation Commission, and that is a conduit for transportation monies coming to the cities. So we had a couple projects come through, the I-238 Corridor Improvement Project. Right now we're working on Main Street. We're working on upgrading the streets throughout the city. So most of these capital improvement projects going forward in the near term are going to be with street improvements, interconnections with the freeways, the industrial I-80 intersection and corridor improvement, the Tennyson corridor improvement. You know, we're gonna take a look at Tennyson, a neglected area of Hayward for so many years. And I know about that because I worked at the Kaiser Hospital when I was going to Cal State Hayward. And South Hayward has been neglected for too long, so we're going to beautify that area. So that's one of the capital improvement projects, beautifying that, giving it a true boulevard look, sprucing it up, increasing the economic vitality of the Tennyson corridor. That's pretty much what the infrastructure committee is going to be doing. We're also going to be reviewing the capital improvement projects. You've seen our library, our 21st century library. That would normally come under the purview of the infrastructure committee.
I wanted to talk to you about the library also. When are we expecting to see it open? I also what I wanted to know is after this project of great investment,
$80 million.
$80 million. How is spending that money going to be reflected in the lives of the citizens, of the residents of the city? What services is going to provide, and how is it going to change us as a city?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really going to embellish a lot on what we've got going for our Literacy Plus programs. You know, we do a lot of tutoring. In fact, the mayor is part of the Literacy Plus program, and she actually tutors some of the kids that come from the high school, English as a second language learners. So we're going to improve on that with technology that you will not believe.
That's what I've
There are
heard.
going to be computers all over that place. And you know, a library isn't what it used to be when I was a kid with books, and you go to the file and you look up the subject matter area, or if you're doing in college, you're doing a term paper or a research paper, you look through all the files. Yes, it does have that, but so much more in today's technology-driven society. There's going to be a lot for not just the high school students. I expect to see some college students go in there. It is a beautiful library. And I tell you, I took a tour of that a couple months ago. It's still not finished. But I walked in those 2 doors and I looked up, and it's very open. It's a state-of-the-art building. It is going to be platinum LEED certified because it is so energy efficient. But I walked in and I looked up and I thought, oh my, this really does have the wow factor working for it. It is huge, it's open, it's airy, it is so conducive to learning. And I can't wait for it to open. It's going to open, by the way, you mentioned, you want to know, it's going to open in June, we think.
Okay. Well, I can't wait, and also I have to see, you know, I think that these kind of projects as a city, it's a project that excites young parents, because we know that that's where our kids, the next generation, and maybe the next few generations are going to be spending their time.
Yes.
Probably college students, it's too late for them. They already spend their time somewhere else. But we need to, as a library, I think that we need to be able to keep up with the new ways that the young people are going to be learning, which I think it's going to be very different from what you know, we learn. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about 2018. I know that I mentioned it in the beginning, but it's serious. So 2018, it's a year where 2 positions are going to be open in the council. The major position is also going to be open. One of the positions that are going to be opening is yours.
Yes.
And you're going to be running again.
Correct.
How does that feel? Are you?
Well, obviously I have the 8 years experience. I've learned a lot. I think I've got a lot to contribute to this city, and I continue to learn so much about this city. And you know, I was born in Hayward. I've seen the city progress. I've seen it evolve and go through different kinds of developments. I've seen some of the major subdivisions, Southgate, Woodland Estates, Schaefer Park, and I've seen them develop. And in many of those projects that we've seen, the projects of the 60s and the 70s, they perhaps were not built as well as I would have liked to have seen them. And now I'm in a position to where I can make good choices, put good products out there in some of these projects. And as these projects come before me, and I did this when I was a planning commissioner as well. I served 8 years on the planning commission.
That's right.
I'm looking at really good, knock your socks off kinds of projects.
City planning.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a number of those coming online. Probably the biggest one is the Mervyn's project. And the Mervyn's project is the one that really excites me because, you know, the first time that project came around, I rejected it. And it was rejected on a 4-3 vote. It was done by a different developer, but it didn't have, remember I said, talked about the wow factor, it didn't have that for me. And it was basically a residential project. It didn't have any commercial or retail component to it. And it wasn't until many of us complained to the developer that you've got to have a little bit of retail in there that they came on board. And I think they eventually compromised and put 10 to 12,000 square feet of retail, which is a Starbucks, and it didn't impress me at all. So we rejected that project. Along comes a new developer, Dollinger Properties. They're local, they're not from LA like a lot of our developers come from. And their whole shtick is not just residential development. Their whole thing is retail development. And they're local, and they've got the connections with Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Sprouts. So now we've got a new development that contains not only 476 apartments, market rate apartments, but 80,000 square feet of retail.
Okay.
And that's what we need to activate that downtown area. And so I voted for that, and it's a beautiful project.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. And I know that in the past, you have defended our downtown area, I know that the way that the downtown area looks today is not what you envisioned. It's not what you would have liked, and having a freeway run through our downtown is not what you would have called an amicable, family-friendly downtown area.
Not at all.
Now, I think that's probably just water under the bridge at this point, or is it?
Well, it's water under the bridge in the sense that we've got the so-called loop working right now. But let's define what the loop is all about. The loop is one small component to a much bigger project.
Right.
The I-238 Corridor Improvement Project, which stretches all the way down to Industrial Boulevard. 90% of that I like. If you look from Industrial going all the way to Foothill, you'll see we've undergrounded the utilities. We've created a median down the middle, giving it a true boulevard look.
Feel.
We've got trees, we've got sidewalks. I don't have a problem with that part of the I-238 corridor improvement. What I do have a problem with is this so-called loop. And I object to the loop for a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's disrespectful to Hayward because the loop is based on the premise that we have to relieve north-south congestion. Well, that's not about Hayward. That's about people traveling through Hayward.
Right.
And anyone will tell you who's interested in economic development and increasing the economic development in their downtown will tell you you need destination traffic, not through traffic. You don't want people driving through and saying, oh, what a beautiful cinema, I might visit there sometime.
I'm going to stop by and move in here.
You don't want that. It has to be destination traffic. So the loop contradicts many of the priorities of the council had before and the council had subsequent to the development of the loop. Number one, we are required in order to receive money from the Alameda County Transportation Commission to have what is known as a complete streets policy. A complete streets policy recognizes multimodal transportation. That's not just the automobiles, but pedestrians and bicycles as well. And so we're all of our communities are striving for that. You cannot have a pedestrian-friendly complete streets policy and contradict that with a loop, with a freeway going right through the middle of your city. It's just an antithesis. It's just the opposite of what you want in a downtown. So we are addressing it. You say it's water, you referenced that it might be water under the bridge, and it is in a sense, but what we've done, and I've stayed on top of this issue for many years. I've been hounding the city manager, public works director to the point where I've nauseated them. And finally, we put together what's called a downtown specific team that developed a downtown specific plan. And so we looked at things like traffic circulation and the new library. So we're looking at ways to mitigate some of the negative aspects of the loop. One of them that we're looking at is going back to a two-way B Street. We haven't decided on it yet, but we're looking at it. There have been some ideas floated about talking about even making A Street a two-ways again. Again, no decisions made about that. But we're recognizing that and we're trying to mitigate some of those negative aspects.
Okay. Well, it's great to hear you talk about that. When Mr. Salinas was here, we were also playing with the idea of what I started calling a Hayward financial district, an area that would be top-of-the-line communications, that would invite industry and businesses to move in because connectivity is top of the line. And I don't think that we can have that with a 6-lane freeway going through that area.
You can't. And San Leandro has that kind of connection point with industries where they're getting free internet connections and tie-ins. So, and Mr. Salinas is very knowledgeable in that area.
Well, that would be an interesting team. So November 2018,
It's coming up quick.
November 2018. Are you campaigning already?
I'm getting together with the administrative side of my campaign. My wife is very much involved in this, and she enjoys it. She's actually very involved in her own right. She's the chairman of the Personnel Commission for Hayward Unified School District, and they deal with all the classified workers. So she's very much into the political life, and she attends a lot of the functions that I go to. So we've got all our paperwork in, that's required. We're looking forward to the certification process and gathering the signatures. She's taking care of the website for me. And we do have our consultant, again, as I recommend anybody that's running for a seat like this to have a consultant, because there are so many technical issues. A lot of people think, oh, I can do that. I see them, I watch TV, I can push buttons.
But I can do that myself.
Yeah, but and they probably could, but you got to get there, and it's much more difficult getting there. So yeah, I'm preparing. I'm not taking anything for granted.
And then this is a term that would last 4 years.
Correct.
That would take us all the way to 2022, which I have to say it's the future. It's the next. Who knows what life will look like in 4 years? Maybe we won't be driving our cars anymore.
Well, with autonomous vehicles coming out, it looks like it might be the case.
That's true.